All right, so let's talk about food webs. This is mostly a review. So I am going to go really fast through this, and you should also be jotting down these notes. And when you're on your guided notes template that I gave you, and then you should be gluing this into your journal. Make sure you update your table of contents as well. So here are your essential questions for this. How can you diagram the energy flow through a living system, and how would you describe food webs in different ecosystems? So this is a review here from the next slideshow that you guys are going to be watching. You should be doing this slideshow first, okay? So if you're doing this slideshow first, great. If you pulled up the other slideshow first, then you should go back to this one, okay? Anywho, you don't need to write this down again. That's why it's in red, because it's in the other guided notes. So energy in a living system. All living things need energy. We already know this. We talked about this in photosynthesis last class lesson, basically. And we know that this is transferred to an animal that eats it, right? The energy from photosynthesis is. So that animal then transfer that energy to the next animal, which eats it. And then this is a process that goes on and on and on. So let's talk about an actual food chain. Here is a picture of what a food chain looks like. And at this point, you have drawn one yourself and you've done these in warm-ups. So it's a single pathway in which energy and nutrients are passed from one living organism to another. Energy is used up as it moves up the food chain, and the arrow represents the energy being transferred. So the sun gives energy to the leaf gives energy to this, and this gives energy to this, and this gives energy to this. That's why I told you guys, some of you guys just had dashes, and I said make sure you guys actually draw the arrow because that is really important in food chains. So next is a food web. Here's an example of an actual food web. So a network of food chains by which energy and nutrients are passed on from one living organism to another. So you'll have multiple pathways here. So that's why this one is a little bit more complex than an actual food chain. The arrows represents energy being transferred just like in a food chain. And usually energy is the greatest at the bottom of the food web. That's why when you guys were making your food web in the lab, I told you guys that you needed to usually have that at the bottom, like the producers at the bottom. But if you didn't have the producers at the bottom, I didn't take off because that was your first time doing it. So here you see that the grass, the marsh grass, and that the cattails are at the bottom, and because those are your producers and they have the most energy. And then you have your apex predator at the top. So we've talked about a food chain, a food web. Now let's talk about energy pyramid. So an energy pyramid is a graphical model of energy flow in a community. Where is the energy lowest? So, and then put this on your guided notes. Tell me where is the energy the lowest, and then tell me where in the population, where's the population smallest. So where do you have the least amount of energy and just basically animals, okay? Organisms, rather. And as you can see that it tells you here that energy is the highest at the bottom. And as you go up the pyramid, it gets lower. And here it tells you that the population is the largest at the bottom. And as you go up, it gets smaller. And in the next PowerPoint, you'll be able to understand why. So here's some vocabulary. You should have already done these things in your Freyer models, but it's a quick review. So just make sure you write this down, the actual terms. So you have producer, it makes their own food. Consumers get energy from eating other organisms. Decomposers, you recycle dead organisms into chemical nutrients used to soil, air, and water. And then you have more vocabulary here. You have your herbivores. That means they eat only plants. Carnivores eat only meat. Omnivores, they eat both plants and meat. That's us. Scavengers eat bodies of dead organisms. Understand that scavengers are different from decomposers, okay? Because a scavenger is something like a vulture, and a decomposer is something like a mushroom, okay? All right, next, here's some more vocabulary. You have producer, you have a primary consumer, secondary consumer, tertiary consumer, top consumer, which is also called an apex consumer. And so those are illustrated here. You have your producer, primary, you have a secondary, tertiary, and then you have a top or apex one. Here, you'll do this in another activity, so you really don't have to worry about this too much. All right, thanks, guys. You should have been writing down your notes in your guided notes template, and you should be gluing this into your journals. Thank you.